Good morning, everyone. I guess that sounds pretty good. Welcome to the inaugural Donald and Lorena Meier Wildlife Film, Photo, and Video Symposium. Thank you very much for coming this morning. I'm Greg Left. I've been on the faculty here at CSU since 1988. That's when Michael Madrid down on the end there with a beard, that's when he graduated from CSU. And I am older than him, despite how things might look. This symposium is the result of a decision, it's the result of the dedication of CSU, the fundraising unit, and also the Donald and Lorena Meier Foundation. 3 of the members of the foundation board of directors are very well connected to Colorado State University, and I'd like to point out Steve Homan in the audience here as one of those who's on the board of directors and decided to help fund this project. One of the board members who could not be here, Gene Kepke, he earned 3 degrees at CSU, his bachelor's, his master's, and his PhD, and then he had a long career at the University of Nebraska, Kearney, including upper administration jobs there. Gene's wife, Connie, is Donald and Lorena Meier's niece, so there's a connection to the foundation for sure, and she's a 1969 graduate of the College of Health and Human Sciences here. Their daughters, Christine Hirschfeld and Jennifer Homan, also are CSU alums in zoology and art. Gene and Connie's granddaughters also have CSU ties. Claire Homan graduated in English from CSU in 2021, while her sister, Samantha Homan, is currently a senior in art. Both of the Kepke's sons-in-law, I think I said that right, Ben Hirschfeld, also a CSU grad, and Steve Homan, who you met just a minute ago, also sit on the board of the Meier Foundation. And that's just part of the story of a lot of connections over a long period of time that inspired Gene and his family to proceed with funding this symposium. I am sure that many of you don't know who Donald and Lorena Meier are and how they came into this picture to begin with. In a brief introduction, and I'm going to read this because I don't want to mess it up, I can tell you that Donald Meier was the creator of a number of television programs, including Zoo Parade, which most of us are too young to remember, from the 1950s. And there's my phone. Must be an important call. I'm used to that in class. So, Donald Meier created Zoo Parade, as I mentioned, but also Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, who many of us in the audience are quite familiar with. Because we grew up watching it Sunday nights after we watched Disney and before we watched Mission Impossible and before Monday morning school. Lorena Meier was by Don's side the whole time, and she was not only a personal partner but also a business partner who kept the machine running at all times. You'll also recognize Marlin, Perkins, and Jim Fowler, who both starred in the Wild Kingdom as the hosts. You'll know a lot more about them in just a minute when we show this film. The Meier Foundation also has provided significant gifts to the University of Nebraska, and several years ago, faculty member Barney McCoy from Nebraska created a documentary about Don Meier and his accomplishments, and that's where we're going to start this program.
In its 25-year run on television, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom showed wildlife behavior never before photographed.
All at once, there's a shot of the orca out here. You see the big dorsal fin. Out of nowhere, this one explodes up onto the beach and grabs a sea lion and drags it back into the ocean.
I don't know anybody that had ever photographed it before. Warren and the photo staff were right there, got on it, and captured it, and just priceless.
Holding the line and keeping the quality high, that is the genius. You put all those together and you have the success of a wild kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom is presented by Mutual of Omaha, people you can count on.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom grew out of the early days of television in Chicago. The award-winning series, created by television pioneer Don Meier, was the grandfather of all nature and wildlife shows. In the next hour, we'll see the innovations and the legacy while exploring the Wild Kingdom. Wild Kingdom owes its existence in part to a late 1940s Chicago TV program. It was called Zoo Parade. It was co-hosted by Jim Hurlbut and Marlin Perkins, director of Chicago's Lincoln Park Zoo.
Hello there. I'm glad you could join us again today. You know, Jim, very frequently I see animals around the zoo doing things more or less in their spare time, playing, having all kinds of fun, maybe taking a bath or some unusual little activity. I thought it'd be fun to put some of those together today in this program of Unguarded Moments.
Perkins, always affable, was a natural for the program. He was an expert animal handler, a knowledgeable naturalist, and Perkins could talk about wildlife in ways people understood. As Lincoln Park Zoo director, Perkins also got to call the shots.
But he was there, he was the boss, and he could do anything that he wanted to do in the way of setting up. He had the keepers working for him, and so he could do things there. He could tour around the zoo, and we'd follow him with cameras, and he'd visit the animals in their cages.
Oh, I don't want to get too close to him because I remember you told me that over in India, the man-eating tigers are a real menace to the native population.
Oh, menace. I should say they are a menace. Why, you know, they kill lots and lots of people in India every year. One year they tabulated 882 deaths from just tigers alone in India. And
she means business, too, doesn't she?
She does indeed mean business.
When Zoo Parade director Reinhold Warrenrath was called back to the Navy to serve in the Korean War, Don Meier stepped in to fill his boots. It was 1950, and the NBC network, still hungry for shows to fill its growing schedule, started airing Zoo Parade across the country. It wasn't long before Zoo Parade ran out of programming options at the Lincoln Park Zoo.
We had done the monkey house, the lion house, and the aviary, and we would go from there then to other parts of the zoo. But eventually that became so common that we felt that we should just move into other areas.
This program is being presented in compatible color, pioneered and developed by RCA. That's Pikes Peak, most famous mountain in the United States. Below us is the only zoo in the United States built alongside a mountain highway. This is the road we travel today on Zoo Parade.
Those other areas meant taking Zoo Parade to other zoos across America. Here, Meier began placing his indelible stamp on the wildlife program.
We started visiting other zoos around the country, and we went to all of the major zoos in the United States and did pretty much what we had been doing at the Lincoln Park Zoo.
Meier's next step was even bolder. Meier convinced NBC to let Zoo Parade go to Africa.
Today, Zoo Parade is on safari in Africa. The Zoo Parade safari has moved to South Africa, the location of the world's largest game reserve, Kruger National Park.
We decided to go to Africa and try to do a series of shows that would be completely sound, sync sound in the field. We had never done that before. And we decided to shoot it on film, which we had never done before.
Meier's production crew spent 5 months filming from East Africa to South Africa. The logistics and risks were enormous. Hundreds of miles from the nearest village. No phones, no email. Shooting color film of some of the world's fastest, biggest, most ferocious animals. Working in some of Earth's harshest, most remote regions.
He had to get the right lighting conditions, in the humidity of the climate. He had to take film and those cameras out into the wilderness, get that moment on film and shoot an awful lot, then bring it back and edit it in a time that we would now say was pretty primitive.
Visitors by the thousands drive to Kruger to see the animals, but they must not leave their cars. Almost every day, a kill is made by the lions someplace in Kruger. But being on hand to see one, as you are now, is a spine-tingling, dramatic experience. The herd of impala senses the presence of a stalking enemy.
We're standing on the hottest spot we've found so far in Africa. We're right in front of a fire that's been raging now for 4 days in Kruger National Park. Jim, it's fires like this that play heck with a lot of animals, isn't it?
It sure is, Marlin, because that fire is frightfully hot, and I imagine lots of animals that get caught in this thing are burned up in the fire, and it burns over the...
It was a huge technical and programming leap forward. It would also create the formula for TV wildlife programs that's still being used today.
So that model, that formula, proved to be very successful later on. It took us out of ourselves and took us to an exotic land.
And so I decided this was the time to learn. And so I hired people who I thought knew what they were doing. And we found the right places to go, and we went and we took our time and we worked our way through it, and it worked out very well.
A dozen Zoo Parade programs from Africa were filmed, edited, and broadcast on NBC stations across America.
And the show then was very successful. And the next year we went down to the Amazon in South America. And we were down there for about 5 or 6 months, I guess.
This real-life story, though, had a surprise ending. When Meier and crew returned home in 1957, they were told NBC had canceled Zoo Parade. The network wanted to produce its own entertainment programs. Zoo Parade didn't fit.
When they canceled Zoo Parade, they also canceled a lot of other shows. And the direction that the local station was going was not, at this time, going to be a producer of programs for the network.
Zoo Parade was history. In the 6 years that followed, Meier became a freelance producer of several other successful TV programs. But he never stopped believing America would watch the right kind of wildlife program, a show Meier made a pilot of in 1960.
And so I developed a pilot of the show called Wild Kingdom, and that pilot was involving Marlin as the host because I had used him down on the Amazon, and he was the host of Zoo Parade. He was a known name and a very recognizable one, and one that had a great audience appeal.
It wasn't easy. NBC still owned Marlin Perkins' contract and all the film Meier's crews had shot in the Amazon. Meier offered to buy them both.
When we finally got to the final negotiation on the money, it seems that there was a thing called collateral that you had to have to get this money. And I said, well, I don't have any. He said, do you own a house? I said, well, I have a house, but I said, it has a mortgage on it. He said, well, how about a second mortgage? I said, that sounds good to me.
Meier's next task was to convince one of the networks to broadcast his wildlife show.
And so the next day, I think I was in New York, and I was showing it to ABC, and I showed it to NBC, and I found after a while that they said, well, you got to get a sponsor for it first.
Meier made 84 visits to advertising agencies across the country. He visited such cities as Chicago, New York, Detroit, and Los Angeles, seeking a sponsor for Wild Kingdom. And 84 times, Meier was turned down.
I wouldn't say he was driven, but he was very determined that there was something there and that it could eventually come about, and he just persistent, and he kept at it and finally won out.
From the very beginning, Don Meier never compromised on what the ideal was there, and he was going to stick at it as long as possible to find the buyer.
Then serendipity entered the picture. Marlin Perkins, now director of the St. Louis Zoo, paid a visit to V.J. Scott, Scott was president of the Mutual of Omaha Insurance Company. Scott told Perkins that Mutual of Omaha wanted to sponsor a new television program, a show the insurance company could build a national image around.
And Marlin said, well, why don't you call Don Meier? He's got a pilot film I think you might be interested in looking at. Knowing full well that I did, you know. And so I would say within an hour, the vice president of Mutual of Omaha was on the telephone and said, can you come out and show us a film that we just heard about? And I said, sure.
In the wild kingdom where death is swift, life depends on a design for survival.
Mutual of Omaha liked what it saw. In 1963, it signed on through the NBC network as sponsor of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom is presented by the company with coverage for everyone. The greatest name in health insurance, Mutual of Omaha.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Now, important thing about that title is that was one of those early examples of effective branding. Anyone who grew up in that era doesn't immediately say Wild Kingdom. First reference is Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha was the perfect marriage because it associated well with their brand. They were going to take you places with risk and yet provide you the security of being able to watch it at the same time.
The first Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom broadcast aired Sunday, January 6, 1963 on NBC. Marlin Perkins was host, and Jim Fowler a co-host. The first Wild Kingdom was unique. There were no special effects, no glamorous cast. The show, though, had venom-spitting cobras, giant anteaters, and cute lion cubs. It clicked with its audience.
The headline when it went on the air in 1963 for the first time, there was an immediate hit. It was just unbelievable. Headlines in local papers and around the country.
In the show's early years, the emphasis was most often on action, capturing animals in the wild, man over beast.
I think I've got it.
This was the new ingredient. Instead of seeing them in a zoo environment, now we could go and see them where they were actually from.
And Wild and Woolly, Wild Kingdom. And so it was, at that point, it never stopped. It just kept gaining momentum.
In 1974, Wild Kingdom parted ways with NBC and became one of television's most successful syndicated programs. 34 million Americans watched Wild Kingdom each Sunday on 224 TV stations across the country.
I think it's really one of the remarkable things about Wild Kingdom that it did manage to speak to people across so many different generations, and that I think was really a key to how successful it was and the fact that it was reaching millions and millions of people every week.
Sometimes Wild Kingdom's action-oriented format outdrew the National Football League Game of the Week. Meier insisted that the show's first value was always to be entertaining.
Look, he's there in the moonlight, and we never even heard his approach. He's moving off, and we can't tell if the moonlight gave us away or not. Well, he's back. The meat from the donkey that the lion killed last night is far to the rear of the trap, and he really wants it, but he remains very suspicious of this whole setup. The door of the trap is held open by a wire stretched to the stick. The scent's too much. He can no longer resist going inside the trap.
One thing that he kept insisting on, he said, we are not doing an educational show, we are doing an entertainment show. He wanted suspense and excitement and action.
Sometimes the action got downright dangerous. Many times, Marlin and Jim seemed to narrowly escape being gored or trampled.
That was a close call. Only Tom's quick thinking saved me.
I was almost killed by elephants a couple of times because we let our guard down. And by the way, don't ever get an angry matriarch, a female elephant, angry at you, thinking that you disturbed her calf.
We would back the truck in backwards to the elephant herd so that if we had to get out, we were going the other way. Didn't have to turn the truck around. We had people who could read the behavior of the elephants and the lions and all the other animals very well. And so as a result, I don't think we were really in great danger most of the time.
Wild Kingdom can be summed up in this one humorous phrase. Jim, you go wrestle the alligator while I stay here in the studio and explain it. And basically that's it. It worked so well.
It was a running joke on The Tonight Show that Fowler would be out in the field wrestling alligators while Marlin stayed back at camp. But Marlin saw his share of action in the field as well. Like the time he and co-host Stan Brock captured an anaconda at a cattle ranch in Guyana.
I gave him a signal and he came riding out on his horse. And over there in South America, he's riding barefoot, of course. They're always barefoot. He's got his rawhide riata and he comes swinging his riata, and the anaconda sees the horse and he starts slipping away, and Stan drops the loop over his head and cinches up on it.
Looks good. Got him. He coils immediately, reacting to the rope.
We'll have to work our way out to him. Our first target is the head.
They follow the rope into this water, and then Marlin and Stan are feeling around in this muddy water trying to get this anaconda. And the one thing they want to do is to control its head. That's the most important thing. Well,
He keeps pulling us off a ledge into deep water. One of us alone wouldn't stand a chance against this snake.
He's got Marlin.
The anaconda exerts fantastic pressure. And its weight keeps you constantly off balance. I've got to pull the coils off, and I'll need Stan's help. We've worked him away from the deep water. Now to get the coils off. He doesn't crush bone, but he'll keep squeezing till breath and circulation are completely gone. That pressure is tremendous.
None too soon. Those coils were tiring Marlin, and neither of us have much fight left.
Okay, if you're interested in seeing that entire film, you can go online, just search for Don Meier documentary, and you'll be able to see the rest of the program. The program's about almost an hour long, and it gets even more fun after this one. Later today, you'll hear from NBC correspondent Kerry Sanders, who is doing similar kinds of things in the Everglades with pythons now. A lot of them being captured there now. We're going to take about a 3 to 5 minute break while we get set up for the next session. And before I go there, I want to mention that Warren Garst, who is the individual that you saw at the end there, was the chief photographer for the program for most of the years that it was on. He's actually related to a cousin of mine's husband. It's a kind of a long relationship. And I actually never met Warren, but he did retire to Fort Collins and spent about 20 years here before he passed away, and donated his entire library of film to the Morgan Library. So if you're interested at any given time to go to the library and ask to see some of that, I think you'll be able to get access. Okay, we're going to take a few minute break now, and when we come back, we'll hear from our wildlife photographer panel. And one more note so that I don't have to introduce Samuel when he comes up. The moderator of this session is Samuel Tom, sorry, mispronounce that every time. He's in his third year on the faculty here at CSU. He came to us from the University of Tampa and got his PhD at Michigan State University, and his expertise is advertising and gaming and marketing, and he'll introduce this panel. He's also a member of our Center for Science Communication at CSU, and that ties him into this topic. So let's take about a 3 to 5 minute break, and when we're ready, Samuel will let you know.